Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Beyond Horizons. Today's a bit of a filler episode. We've got lots of little jobs that I don't necessarily need doing, but I wanted to have a bit more fun with the game before I go away for Christmas. So what we have here is a new SSTO that I've designed, because it's been quite a while since I've designed one, called the Argon, and it is delivering this fancy probe that you're seeing create new sorts of UI in the map screen here. So I mentioned last episode I've installed a few new mods and they've added some new science experiments. Some of these scan the space around Kerbin for resources that can be gathered, such as hydrogen, argon, xen and stuff like that, but also antimatter. So I've set up a couple of these science experiments on this little probe, which I haven't actually named, just to test it out really ahead of the new season, because I think we'll have to create a bit more of a dedicated satellite for detecting antimatter if we ever get round to making an antimatter drive. And there's also a couple of gamma ray experiments which garnered us a little bit of science. And I also put on a gravitometer because I don't think I did that yet. So again, we're just eking out a little bit more science around Kerbin so that we can unlock more of the tech tree. I've only got one more node to unlock and then I'll be there. Anyway, let's talk about the new SSTO Argon. Originally, I was just going to use the Galahad, but I realised the Galahad's actually outdated technology now. It still uses the Whiplash turbojet engines for its air-breathing cycle, and we have access to the fancy new Rapier engine, so I thought, well, let's just build a new one. It's been ages since I've built one, and I just kind of threw this one together quite quick, really. It wasn't too difficult to build. The Rapiers do make building SSTOs very easy. Yeah, so it doesn't have loads of payload capacity. The satellite was quite light, and so I don't think it's really rated to carry super heavy things into orbit, but I didn't really need it to be honest. I just wanted to have a bit of fun. And I gave it that nice little boxy tail wing there, just for a bit of intrigue. I don't really think it helps, actually. It probably increases the drag more than it needs. But yeah, and obviously I went for my nice big wing span because I like my space planes to glide, and that is something that this space plane does very well. Now you may notice that we are on a sun-synchronous orbit at the moment. Well, I suppose we're actually deorbiting, but the satellite is on a sun-synchronous orbit. That wasn't by design. I just wanted to launch at sunrise to get some nice cinematic images, but yeah, which means when we come back down for our return, it's quite hard to pick our landing site. You might have seen I had to time warp just to get the space center, under my orbit, which unfortunately does put it in the nighttime side of Kerbin, making it a bit harder to see. So hopefully you can sort of make out what's going on there. But anyway, re-entry was a breeze. This thing really had no problems at all. I did spend a bit of time making sure that the center of mass and center of lift were pretty much dead on top of each other once this thing was empty. And luckily we had quite a lot of fuel left, actually, to make a return journey back to the runway, because I was a little short. Undershooting is not really my thing. If you've watched the series for a while, you know that overshooting is normally what I like to do, but didn't really do that too badly this time, and we could just turn the engines on and off and bring it back to the runway nice and easily. And coming in for the landing, this was probably one of the smoothest landings I've ever had with a space plane. At first I flare a little too hard and I'm worried that I'm going to miss, the end of the runway, but then I just gently glide back down to the surface and yeah, stopped nice and easily. So all round a very successful mission. The satellite won't be collecting a whole lot of data now that I've run the experiments, but it was mainly there just to test the capabilities of the new experiments. There's some other ones as well that I'd like to launch, but they're a lot bigger, so I'll probably have to launch those in a bit more of a conventional manner. But yeah, I had a lot of fun building this space plane. It's nice to get back to my roots. Keeping on the theme of having a little fun, I picked up a tourism contract to bring 3 tourists to visit the Foxglove outpost on the surface of Minmus. And I picked up this contract not because it pays particularly well or that it's easy to do. In fact, I actually realised it's quite tricky to do. Tourists aren't allowed to go on EVA because obviously they don't have the training for it. So we needed to think of a way to get tourists in and out of the base without them having to go EVA, and so I came up with this rover here with its adjustable docking port. There are 2 docking ports on the Foxglove station, so I don't know how high they are, so I thought I've done this before where I put my docking port on a piston and I can just adjust the height of it so that I can get it to be the right height and so we can get some tourists on the station. Now, the bigger problem that this thing had is, well, I need to get the tourists and this rover out to Minmus, and well, they are tourists and they are paying a bit of money, so I want to have some element of luxury. I don't want to just stuff them in a tin can. So I got to work designing a pretty fun way to transport all of this gear out to Minmus. Say hello to STS Osprey. It's been a long time since I've done a shuttle. The last one was the Hawk, way back in the very early episodes of the season. The reason I don't do them is because they're very difficult to do, and this was no exception. Last time I got around the off-center thrust by putting the main engines on hinges and then turning the hinge as I went up. I didn't really want to do that this time, so instead I've now got access to the vector engine, so I try to use those, but even then this thing was quite difficult to fly. While we had the solid rocket motors, it flies pretty straight, so that's not too much of a problem. Once we ditch those, then we really start to see the off-center center of thrust, creating all sorts of problems. So I have to dial back the thrust here. You see we're at 1/3 thrust, and that's just so we're not producing so much torque that the SAS and the vernier thrusters can't counter it. And there we are, we ditched the main fuel tank. It's going to fall back into Kerbin's atmosphere and burn up, and we won't ever see it again. Once we're in orbit, we use 2 swivel engines to do the rest of our orbital maneuvering. But yeah, there we are, we're headed out to Minmus on the Osprey. We've got Jebediah and Fozy Kerbin piloting the thing because those are our trusted pilots. If anything goes wrong, we know that we're in good hands. We've got our 3 tourists, and we've also got a scientist whose name I've forgotten. I sent them up as well because I thought it's, in my headcanon, it's almost like they're a tour guide. So I didn't just build the Osprey launcher in one go. There was some testing that went on as well. Here's a couple of clips on screen now of some pretty horrific endings to this, but they're all simulations, not canon events. One time, as you'll see here, I got it into orbit, and then I used a very powerful decoupler for the main thruster, and decoupling it just exploded the plane, which was very annoying. But again, none of that is canon. Anyway, we're here around Minmus now, just cutting out most of the journey. You can see I'm making an inclination change just to bring our orbit over the Foxglove base. I said a couple of episodes that the Foxglove base is pretty close to the equator. That is actually not that true. It's not that close to the equator. It's just Minmus is such a small body that inclination changes really don't cost a lot of delta V. So they're pretty easy to do. Now, this thing is... I know I said it was going to be a luxury trip, and for the most part that's true. I like to think this is like almost like a private jet. Unfortunately, the landing on Minmus is not going to be very luxury, just because of the nature of this thing. So the idea is to bring it down on its tailplane like this, and then at the very last moment flip it onto its wheels. Luckily, Minmus's gravity is so low that's not going to break anything. I also included the vernier thrusters just to, you know, cushion the impact if we do fall a little too fast. And yeah, luckily this actually works out a treat. Nothing broke and all of our tourists seem happy enough. Now that we're on the surface of Minmus, it's time to get our tourists in the rover and drive them over to the base and collect that contract money. Now, I have extensively tested most of this mission. The only part that I haven't tested was this part right here. So we have the rover exiting the cargo bay there, and I wanted to get a nice little cinematic, and then as it comes out, it does like a little hop, skip and a jump as it clips into some of the ramp there. Yeah, there it goes. And I realised, ooh, those wheels might be a little too far apart to get it back up the ramp. But, you know, let's not think about that right now. We'll deal with that problem if we get to it. For now, let's just get the tourists into the base. So a little bit more about the rover. You can see it's got a scanning arm and a few experiments on the side there. I realised once this contract is over, I don't want to just have a useless rover hanging around on the surface, so I've given it some science capabilities. I think there's a few more experiments around Minmus we can grab, so at some point we'll do some scientific exploration in this rover and yeah, make the most of it so we're not completely wasting it. Anyway, here we are just reversing into the base, using the upside down docking camera to help, and yeah, we get all docked up with no problems whatsoever. So the contract stipulates that we have to keep them on the base for 2 hours, so we just time warp and let them enjoy themselves, you know, have a little, I don't know, explore around the base. I don't really know what you would do if you were visiting a scientific outpost like this. It's not really a whole lot of comfort or entertainment, it's just a scientific outpost. Anyway, so now it was time to face the music and see if we could actually get this thing back into the space plane. Yeah, so it was quite a difficult job. I tried to increase the traction for the ice, and I realised that was actually slowing my ability to get up the ramp. I think what the traction control does is slow down the wheel to stop it basically spinning out on slippery terrain, but when we're going up the ramp we need all the power the wheel can muster. So after trying to line the wheels up perfectly, that wasn't working. I decided to just brute force it, go as fast as I can, and we just, yeah, bounce our way into the cargo bay. The little platform that I put on the inside with the ramps weren't quite lined up properly either, so that causes us to do a little bit more bouncing. And yeah, just bringing the traction control down as much as possible so we can get all of that power from the wheels. And yeah, we basically brute force our way back into the cargo bay. And we can get the tourists back, which is very lucky because I was very worried that I'd have to send up some kind of rescue mission if they got stuck here. Anyway, once the tourists are settled back in their seats, we get the rover back out of the space plane for the last time. And yeah, we'll just leave it here. I was going to dock it up to the station, but I didn't for some reason. I don't really know why. Instead, I just skid about on the ice a little bit, doing some cool drifts there. Yeah, obviously, making your base on ice means you're not going to have a whole lot of traction on the ground on account of the slippery nature of the surface. But that's part of the fun. You can do some cool drifts. Anyway, now it is time to, well, head back home. So I needed to align myself eastward so that, make the most of Minmus's rotation to get us into the orbit. Not that it really matters. I mean, like I said, this body is so small, we probably could have just gone the other way, but I want to do things properly. One of the benefits of making our base on such flat terrain is that it's very easy to take off. After some final checks, we fire up the engine, and once we're at speed, we can just pitch the nose up and take off as if we were in an atmosphere. Yes, the Osprey is such a good space plane that it doesn't even notice when it's in a complete vacuum. Now we're just making our return trip to Kerbin. This thing has quite a bit of fuel left over, so we're going to do the normal thing of burning down to a low Kerbin periapse, and we'll circularize down there. That way we can pick our landing spot. You may notice this has no air-breathing engines whatsoever, so we have to be pretty accurate about where we land, because if we miss, then this thing is either going on a mountainside or in the ocean. It's just occurred to me, looking at the footage here, that the tourists have been in space for around 22 days, which, even in a luxury private jet, is probably pretty cramped. I don't know if they're getting a particularly luxurious experience, but hey, this is what they wanted. They wanted to go see the space station, and I didn't really want to break the bank getting them out there, because that would defeat the point of doing the contract. Anyway, we are just making our deorbit trajectory here, so we can try and get back at the Space Center. Now, in my haste to get this mission done, I realised there's two things I forgot to put on this space plane. The first being air brakes, which are usually quite helpful during re-entry to, slow down and not burn up. But also, even in the lower atmosphere, when we're not, going quite so fast, they're useful to slow down on the runway. And more to that point, I forgot drogue chutes. I like to put those on my space planes just to stop quickly on the runway, because my ability to land is not great, and so sometimes I actually touch down on the runway when I've only got, less than half of it left, so I like to be able to slow down pretty quick, but I didn't have that option this time, and I only realised this as I was coming back down. So, well, I just had to make a good landing, I guess. And you can see that the Space Center is soaring beneath us there, and in typical fashion, I am completely overshooting the runway. Now, there is another runway nearby that I think I can make it to, Cola Island, that's part of the Kerbin side mod. And so I was like, well, maybe I can make it there. Unfortunately, we're not turning very fast just because we are still going quite quick. But once we slow down, it's starting to look a little bit more feasible. But my concern mainly is that if I do a big loop round, I don't think I've got the energy to actually pull that off, and we'll stall, and then we're going to end up in the ocean with 3 dead tourists, which is not ideal. So Jebediah gets on the intercom and he says, you know what, just as a treat, we're going to treat you to a high G adventure. I'm pretty much over the runway, you can see, so I decide, well, let's just nosedive for it. You can see we've not got a whole lot of horizontal distance between us and the runway, so yeah, I basically point the nose directly down, and this is quite helpful as well, because now I know we're definitely not going to stall. You can see we're picking up quite a bit of speed here. Yeah, so we put down the landing gear, and then I accidentally knock the button again, almost put them away. That would make for a pretty horrific landing. But yeah, we get there in time, nobody passed out, and we give them a very Ryanair touchdown, slamming it down on the tarmac, but getting everyone back in one piece. But there we are, the Osprey makes it home safely, and that's about $1 million funds in the bank for us. We don't really need the money. I just, like I said, took the contract because it seemed like an interesting challenge that forced me to make a new shuttle and make a new rover. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with this mission. It's why I want to keep the second season also in career mode, just because the contracts do force you to be creative, and that's something I want to keep doing. And to finish off today's episode, I figured we'll launch another keg up to the Hammerhead station. The more fuel it has, the better it'll do at refueling things, even though right now nothing needs refueling, but I just wanted to launch something else from the moon because it's good fun. And this time, as you can see, I've got 2 vector engines for the ascent stage because last time 1 wasn't enough, and now we have more than enough fuel to land. I have also given it a bit more fuel just to be safe. You can see I'm trying to bring it back to the base, but I couldn't see it on the map, so I kind of had to guess where it was. Luckily, as I came down, I could see a little glimmer against the grey, and I was like, there's the base. I know Kerbal Constructs does have waypoints for the bases, but for some reason this one wasn't showing in the map screen, so yeah, I'll have to look into that. The descent was almost perfect. I'm so mad. I do this all the time, so as I'm getting close to the surface, I'll hold the retrograde marker, but if you slow down too much, yeah, you spin out like that, and so I was dead on for the launch pad, and I just missed it. I was going to try and put it back on, but I realized it wasn't really worth it. It's close enough. Next time we'll get closer. But yeah, the base is working really well, and it's kind of a proof of concept to this launch as well, just to show we are ready to start building ships in orbit from here, which can go even further than the ones that we built from Kerbin orbit, launching from the surface there, because now we can make them a lot bigger and better. Anyway, that's all I've got for today's episode. Thank you very much for watching. I really wanted to get this one out before Christmas because I've got quite a busy holiday schedule, and I don't know if I'll be able to make another episode for a bit. And it's also why I wanted to make this episode just a little bit longer, just to make it more worth the wait before the next episode. So yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season, whatever you choose to celebrate. I was going to do a New Year special like I did last year, but seeing as I'm trying very hard to wrap up this season, I figured instead of doing that, I'll just do like an end of series recap when that comes around. I think that's probably a bit more sensible. But I don't know when that'll happen, definitely in the new year sometime. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, and if you've been watching for the past year, or you've just recently joined the series, thank you for your support. It's always very nice to see other people actually care about the things I'm doing in Kerbal Space Programs. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. If you want to check out older episodes of Beyond Horizons, you can check out the playlist this video's in, or have a look on screen now, one will be recommended to you. But I've been Moonfish1001, and I will see you next year.